My father screamed that I was a useless parasite and kicked me out, claiming I never contributed a dime. I left without a word. A month later, my sister called crying about her unpaid tuition. I smiled, blocked her number, and watched their financial house of cards collapse. The headache had started around 2:00 p.m., a dull throb behind my left eye that usually signaled I had been staring at spreadsheets for too long. By 6:00 p.m., it was a full-blown migraine, the kind that makes the edges of your vision blur and lights fracture into painful starbursts. I had just closed my laptop, the fan whirring down into silence, signaling the end of a 10-hour shift. I was a senior data consultant. To my father, Robert, that meant I played on the computer all day. To my company, it meant I was the person who found the leaking millions in their supply chain. I walked out of my bedroom, my office, craving nothing more than a glass of ice water and silence. What I found was a tribunal. My father was sitting at the kitchen table, his hands clasped over a stack of papers. My mother, Susan, was wiping the counter with a ferocity that suggested she was trying to scrub away her own anxiety. She didn't look up when I entered. That was the first bad sign. "We need to talk," Robert said. His voice wasn't loud yet, but it had that gravelly rumble that preceded an eruption. I stopped by the fridge, my hand on the handle. "Can I get some water first, Dad? My head is killing me." "Your head?" He let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "Your head hurts? From what? Sitting in your pajamas? Typing?" He mimicked typing with his thick, calloused fingers, twisting his face into a mockery of focus. "Try working a real shift, Amelia. Try standing on concrete for 8 hours. Then tell me about your head." I closed my eyes for a second, breathing in the cold air from the open fridge. "I work today, Dad. Just because I'm not sweating doesn't mean." "Don't," he slammed his hand on the table. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Susan flinched, the rag stopping in her hand. "Don't you dare talk to me about work. You don't know the meaning of the word." He stood up then, pushing his chair back with a screech of wood against tile. He picked up the stack of papers, bills, I realized immediately, and shook them at me. "Look at this: electric, water, gas, the mortgage rate adjustment." He threw them back down. They scattered across the table. "Everything is going up, every single thing. And here you are, 29 years old, living under my roof, eating my food, using my internet to play your little games." "I don't play games," I said, my voice steady despite the pounding in my skull. "I work, and I pay." "You pay for nothing," he roared, his face flushing a deep, dangerous red. "You buy your own takeout, you buy a few groceries, whoop-de-doo. Do you have any idea what it costs to run a house, to support a family?" He took a step toward me, and for the first time in years, I felt physically small. "I'm sick of it," he spat. "I'm sick of walking in that door after breaking my back and seeing you lounging in your room. You're a leech, Amelia. That's what you are. A parasite." I looked at my mother. "Mom." Susan kept scrubbing. She was scrubbing a spot on the granite that was already clean. "Listen to your father, Amelia," she whispered, her voice trembling. He's under a lot of pressure." "Pressure?" Robert turned on her, then back to me. "I'm under pressure because I'm carrying dead weight, but no more." He pointed a finger at my face. It shook with his rage. "I want you out." The words hung in the air, heavy and absolute. "Dad," I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "You don't mean that, if I leave." "If you leave, my grocery bill goes down," he shouted. "If you leave, maybe I get some peace and quiet. I want you gone. Tonight. If you have a shred of pride left in your body, if you are even half the woman your sister is, you'll pack your bags and get out of my house." My sister, Mia, the golden child studying abroad in London, the one who hadn't worked a day in her life. Something inside me, something hot and sharp, snapped, but on the outside I went ice cold. The migraine seemed to vanish, replaced by a crystalline clarity. "Okay," I said. Robert blinked, seemingly thrown off by my lack of a fight. "Okay." "You said if I have any pride, I'll leave," I said, meeting his eyes. "I have pride, so I'm leaving." Good. He turned his back on me, marching toward the living room. Don't expect a penny from me for a deposit. You figure it out, Miss Data Consultant. I stood there for a moment, looking at the scattered bills on the table. I looked at my mother, who still wouldn't meet my eyes. The betrayal wasn't just the eviction, it was the erasure. It was the absolute, willful ignorance of the invisible safety net I had woven under them for 5 years. He thought I was a burden. He had no idea I was the foundation. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't list the reasons why he was wrong. I walked up the stairs to my room, the sanctuary that had suddenly become a temporary lodging, and pulled my suitcases from the back of the closet. The sound of the zipper opening seemed incredibly loud in the quiet house. Zip. I started with the essentials. Laptop, charger, hard drives. These were my livelihood, the toys Robert despised, the tools that generated a salary 3 times what he made at the warehouse. I moved mechanically, folding clothes and placing them into the dark cavern of the suitcase. My mind was racing, not with panic, but with logistics. I had an emergency fund. I had excellent credit. I could be in a hotel tonight and a new apartment within the week. Financially, I was bulletproof. But emotionally, I felt like I was being carved out. I picked up a framed photo from my dresser. It was taken 3 years ago at Mia's high school graduation. Robert had his arm around Mia, beaming with pride. I was standing slightly off to the side, holding her bouquet because she said it was too heavy. I was smiling, too. I had paid for that dress Mia was wearing. I had paid for the dinner we went to afterward. I had slipped the waiter my card while Robert was in the bathroom so he could feel like the big man treating his family. I placed the photo face down on the mattress. I wouldn't be taking it. As I packed, I could hear the television blaring downstairs. Robert was watching his shows, probably feeling righteous, feeling like the king of his castle who had finally cleared out the rats. I went to my desk and opened my banking app on my phone. The screen illuminated my face in the dim room. There they were, the scheduled transfers. Monthly transfer to Joint Act, mortgage supplement, $1,200. Utility direct pay electric, auto pay on. Utility direct pay water, auto pay on. Mia tuition, Intel. Wire, $4,500 due in 14 days. Mia living stipend, $800 recurring monthly. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could go downstairs right now. I could shove this phone in his face. I could show him the spreadsheet I updated every month, tracking the thousands of dollars I poured into this household to keep his delusion of solvency afloat. I could scream, "I am the reason you still have this house. I am the reason Mia is in London and not community college." But he wouldn't believe me. He would say I was manipulating the numbers. He would say I was lying. Or worse, his pride would shatter, and he would hate me even more for bruising his ego. "If you have any pride left," he had said. I navigated to the Scheduled Transfers tab. Select all. Cancel. A confirmation box popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel all recurring payments to Dad and Mom Joint and Mia London? I didn't hesitate, I tapped yes. The list vanished. The screen refreshed, showing a clean slate. My money was staying with me. I finished packing in 40 minutes, 2 large suitcases and a backpack. I hauled them to the top of the stairs. I could hear my mother in the kitchen, probably making him tea. I walked down the stairs, the wheels of my suitcase bumping softly against the carpeted steps. Thump, thump, thump. When I reached the hallway, I saw them. Robert was in his recliner, feet up. Susan was bringing him a mug. "I'm leaving," I said. Robert didn't turn his head. "Don't slam the door." Susan looked at me, her eyes wet. "Emilia, maybe you can stay at your cousin's, just for a few days until." "No, Mom," I said softly. "I'm gone, you take care." I wanted to warn her. I wanted to say, check the bills next month. But I knew she wouldn't understand. She managed the household budget, but she only saw what entered their checking account. She never questioned why the mortgage payment rarely left it, or why the electric bill never arrived in the mail. I had intercepted everything. I had smoothed every road. "Goodbye," I said. I opened the front door and walked out into the cool night air. I loaded my car, the streetlights humming above me. As I reversed out of the driveway, I looked at the house one last time. The warm glow of the living room window looked inviting, deceptive. They had forgotten one crucial thing. You can't live in a house if you pull out the load-bearing walls. To understand why I didn't turn back, you have to understand the architecture of the lies my family lived in. It wasn't just about money, it was about the mythology of Robert. My father was a man who believed in the sanctity of physical labor. He worked in logistics for a hardware supply chain. He lifted, he drove, he sweated. In his mind, money was an exchange of physical suffering for currency. If your back didn't hurt, you hadn't earned your dollar. When I graduated with my degree in data science, he scoffed. "Computers," he'd said. "A bubble, you can't eat code, Amelia." When I got my first job, he asked what I made. IT. Old him, he laughed and said, "Sure you do. Just don't come crying to me when they fire you for sitting around." So I stopped telling him. 3 years ago, Robert hurt his back. He was out of work for 6 months. Disability payments were a fraction of his salary. The foreclosure notices started coming in pink envelopes that Susan hid in the pantry. I found them. I was living in an apartment downtown at the time. I made the decision in a heartbeat. I moved back home. I told them I wanted to save money for a house and that I'd pay a small rent. In reality, I took over everything. I set up a direct debit for the mortgage. I told Susan I'd handled the paperwork error with the bank. I took over the utility accounts, switching them to paperless billing, my email, not theirs. When Mia got into that prestigious art history program in London, Robert bragged to the whole neighborhood about how he was making it happen. He wasn't, I was. Robert and Susan's combined income barely covered groceries, gas, and Robert's truck payment. Every tuition payment, every textbook, every euro that Mia spent on cultural experiences, parties, came from my checking account. Which brings us to Mia. If I was the invisible foundation, Mia was the ornate spire on top. She was beautiful, charming, and utterly useless. She was 21 and had never held a job. Why would she? She had Dad to promise her the world, and me to pay for it. The Sunday before I was kicked out, just 3 days ago, Mia had FaceTimed us from a cafe in Shoreditch. "Daddy," she had squealed, holding up a latte that probably cost £6. "I need books for the new semester. The list is huge. It's going to be like 500. Robert had puffed out his chest. "Don't you worry, princess. You focus on your studies, I'll handle it." He looked at me then, sitting at the table with my laptop. "Emilia, move your junk so I can write this down." He wrote it down on a sticky note. He stuck it to the fridge. And then he did nothing. He forgot. He always forgot, or he assumed the money would just appear. And it always did. Because I would see the sticky note, sigh, and log into the international transfer portal. I would send the money. Mia would text the family group chat, "Got it. Thanks, Daddy. Love you." And Robert would reply with a thumbs-up emoji. He never asked me if I sent it. He just assumed that his will was law and the universe provided. He assumed his hard work radiated out into the world and paid the bills through sheer karmic force. The antagonist of my life wasn't a villain in a cape. He was a man in a flannel shirt who believed his own hype so intensely that he was willing to cannibalize his own child to maintain the illusion. And now he had a new influence. A month before the explosion, Robert had reconnected with an old buddy from high school, Uncle Jerry. Jerry wasn't my uncle, but he insisted on the title. Jerry was a financial advisor, which meant he sold whole life insurance policies and bad investment schemes. Jerry had been coming over for dinner a lot lately. He drove a leased BMW and wore suits that were too shiny. "Robert," Jerry had said 2 weeks ago, swirling a glass of my father's cheap whiskey. "You're sitting on a gold mine with this house. Equity, Bob, equity, but you got overhead, you got expenses." He had jerked his head toward me. "At her age, she should be paying market rent, or she should be gone. You're enabling her failure to launch." "She says she's saving," Susan had murmured weakly. Jerry laughed. "Saving? She's hoarding, while you two struggle. It's disrespectful, Bob, it's un-American." I saw the way Robert looked at me then. It was a look of calculation. Jerry had planted a seed. I wasn't just a daughter, I was a squatter. I was the reason they weren't rich. If they just got rid of me, their expenses would drop and they could finally live the life Jerry described. Jerry didn't know about the mortgage. Jerry didn't know about the tuition. And Robert, in his arrogance, had never bothered to do the math. So when Robert kicked me out, he thought he was trimming the fat. He thought he was finally taking control of his kingdom. He had no idea he had just fired the CFO, the treasurer, and the sole investor of the corporation of Dad. I moved into a sleek, furnished apartment on the other side of the city. It was quiet. The internet was fast. The view was of the skyline, not the overgrown hedge in my parents' backyard. For the first week, I expected a call. Part of me, the part that was still a frightened little girl wanting her daddy's approval, waited for the phone to ring. I imagined Robert realizing his mistake the moment he opened the electric bill. I imagined Susan finding the unpaid mortgage notice. But the phone stayed silent. I threw myself into my work. I took on an extra project with a client in Singapore, analyzing logistics data, ironic, considering my father's profession. I let the numbers soothe me. Data makes sense. Data doesn't lie. If you remove a variable, the equation changes. It is predictable. Humans are not. 2 weeks in, I got a text from Susan. "Hope you're settled. Dad is still cooling off. Maybe give it another week before you apologize." I stared at the screen, a laugh bubbling up in my throat that sounded more like a sob. Apologize. They were waiting for me to come crawling back, to beg for my room back, to resume my role as the invisible ATM. I didn't reply. Instead, I focused on the date. It was the 14th of the month. The mortgage was due on the 1st. The grace period ended on the 15th. The electric bill cycle closed on the 12th. Mia's tuition deadline was the 20th. I wasn't investigating a stranger. I was watching a demolition I had scheduled years ago simply by stepping away. I didn't need a lawyer or a pie. I had the ultimate leverage: absence. I logged into the utility portal, not to pay, but to check the status. Status, overdue, notice sent. I logged into the university portal. I still had Mia's login credentials saved in my browser from when I helped her register. Status, awaiting payment. Amount, £4,500, flagged for administrative hold. They were sailing toward a cliff, and they were still rearranging the deck chairs, completely unaware that the engine room was empty. The turning point came on a Tuesday. I was at a coffee shop working when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from a joint bank account I still had access to, an old one my mom and I opened when I was 16. I used it to transfer money to her for groceries sometimes. I had emptied it before I left, but I hadn't closed it. Alert: insufficient funds. Transaction declined. Star market, $142.50. My mother was at the grocery store, and her card had been declined. I felt a pang of guilt, sharp and visceral. I pictured Susan at the checkout, the line of people behind her, the flush of embarrassment on her cheeks. My thumb hovered over the transfer button. It would be so easy, just $200, just to save her the shame. Then I remembered Robert's voice. "You've never given this family anything." If I transferred that money, I would prove him right. I would be the safety net again. I would be contributing nothing by secretly contributing everything. I put the phone down. I let the screen go black. I wasn't doing this to be cruel. I was doing this to be seen. For the first time in my life, I was going to let them experience the world without Emilia. The silence broke exactly 28 days after I left. It wasn't Robert, it was Mia. I was in a Zoom meeting when my phone started vibrating off the desk. MIA, FaceTime video. I declined it. It rang again immediately. MIA, FaceTime video. I texted, in a meeting, "What's up?" The response was instant and in all caps. The university locked me out of the system. They say I paid. Dad said he sent it. What is going on? I finished my meeting. I poured a fresh cup of tea. I waited 45 minutes. Then I called her back. Mia's face filled the screen, pixelated and red. She was crying. "Emilia, finally. Oh my God, you have to fix this. I can't register for the Rome trip because my account is on hold." "Hello to you too, Mia," I said calmly. "Don't be like that. This is serious. I called Dad and he yelled at me, said he handled it weeks ago and that the school is just incompetent. But I went to the bursar and they said no funds were ever received. You usually handle the transfers, right? Did you mess up the routing number or something?" There it was. You usually handle the transfers. "I didn't mess anything up, Mia," I said. "I didn't make the transfer." She stopped crying for a second, looking confused. "What? Why did you forget?" "No, I didn't forget. I moved out, Mia. Dad kicked me out." "I know, Mom told me," she said dismissively. "But what does that have to do with my tuition? You always do the bank stuff." "I don't just do the bank stuff, Mia. I pay the bank stuff." Silence, the connection crackled. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice smaller. "The money," I said, leaning into the camera. "The tuition, the rent in London, the stipend, it doesn't come from Dad. It comes from me. It comes from my salary." That's not true," she stammered. "Dad says business is good, he says." "Dad lies," I cut in, "or he's delusional. Either way, when he told me to leave and said I never contributed anything, I stopped contributing. I stopped paying your tuition." Mia's face went through a complex series of contortions: denial, shock, and then, inevitably, anger. But not at Dad, at me. "You can't do that," she shrieked. "You can't just stop. I have classes. I have a lease. You're ruining my life because you got in a fight with Dad? That is so selfish. Emilia, you have to fix this. Pay it now and then you guys can argue later." "I can't pay it, Mia. I have my own rent now. I have my own bills, Dad's. I was a parasite. Parasites don't pay tuition." "I'm telling Dad," she threatened, holding the phone up like a weapon. "I'm going to tell him you're stealing my money." "It's not your money, Mia. And please tell him exactly what I said." I hung up. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Caller ID, Dad. I let it ring. It rang again. Then a text from Susan. "Emilia, please pick up. Your father is having chest pains. Mia is hysterical. We need to sort this out." I texted back. "If he has chest pains, call 911. If he wants to talk about finances, he can email me. I'm working." The trap was sprung, but the beast wasn't caught yet. It was just wounded and thrashing. The next week was a masterclass in escalation. Robert didn't email. He showed up at my old office. I hadn't worked there in 2 years. I had gone fully remote, but he didn't know that. He marched into the lobby of the tech firm downtown, demanding to see his daughter. Security had to escort him out. He called me from the parking lot, leaving a voicemail that was a mix of rage and confusion. "Emilia, I'm at your job. They say you don't work here, so you've been lying about that too. Where are you? Mia says you're holding her money hostage. You think you're smart? You think you can blackmail this family? I'm going to call the police if you don't release those funds." I saved the voicemail. It was evidence. I didn't respond. Instead, I let the reality of the month continue to unfold. The clever trap wasn't something I set. It was the life I had subsidized. And now, the bills were landing like mortar shells. Susan called me 3 days later. She sounded different, quieter, broken. "Emilia," she said, "the lights went out." I sat back in my ergonomic chair, looking out at the city lights. Did they? They cut the power. Everything in the freezer is going to spoil. Your father. He tried to pay it over the phone, but the card was declined. He called the bank. They said. She paused, her voice trembling. They said the account is overdrawn by $400. How is that possible? Dad gets paid on Friday. The mortgage auto draft hit yesterday, Mom, I said gently. It took everything that was there. And it probably wasn't enough, so the bank hit you with overdraft fees. But the mortgage is only $800, she whispered. No, Mom, the mortgage is $2,000. I've been paying the other $1,200 for 5 years. I heard a gasp on the other end, a literal gasp. And the electric, she asked. $250 a month, I paid it. And Mia. $4,000 a semester, plus rent, me. I could hear her breathing, ragged and shallow. She was processing 5 years of reality in 5 seconds. He didn't know, she asked. He didn't want to know, I corrected. And neither did you, Mom. You saw the nice things. You saw the trips. You never asked where the money came from because it was easier to believe Dad was a hero. He's talking about selling his truck, she wept. He's talking about taking a loan from Jerry. Do not let him take money from Jerry, I said, my voice hardening. Jerry is a shark. Mom, listen to me. You are in trouble, real trouble. Mia is going to be sent home. The house is at risk. Come home, she begged. Please, Emilia, just come home. Fix it. He's sorry. He didn't mean it. Just come back and we can go back to normal. I can't, Mom. Why? Because you're too proud. No, I said, because I can't afford you anymore. I have my own life now, and honestly, I like it. He's going to come for you, she warned, her voice dropping to a whisper. He's convinced you stole the money. Jerry is filling his head with ideas. He thinks you have a secret account with family funds that you embezzled. He wants to sue you. Let him try, I said. I hung up, but my hands were shaking. Robert was cornered. His ego was shattered, and with Jerry whispering in his ear, he was dangerous. He wouldn't accept that he was a failure. He needed a villain, and I was the perfect candidate. I needed to end this. I needed to stop the bleeding before he did something stupid like mortgage the house to Jerry or sue me. I needed a confrontation, but on my terms. I looked at the calendar. Mia was flying back tomorrow, forced withdrawal due to non-payment. She was coming home to a dark house and an empty fridge. It was time for a family reunion. The welcome home dinner for Mia was a grim affair, illuminated by the harsh, flickering light of a camping lantern sitting in the center of the dining room table. The power was still out. I hadn't been invited, but I knew it was happening. Susan had texted me, Mia is home, Jerry is here, they are talking about legal papers. Please, Emilia. I pulled into the driveway at 7:00 p.m. Jerry's shiny BMW was parked crookedly behind my father's truck. The house looked like a tomb, dark windows staring blankly out at the street, except for that faint, erratic GL. Out from the dining room. I grabbed my heavy leather satchel from the passenger seat. It contained 5 years of bank statements, tax returns, and transfer logs, color-coded and bound. I took a deep breath. This wasn't a visit, it was a deposition. I unlocked the front door with my key. The air inside was stale and warm. Who's there? Robert's voice boomed from the dining room, laced with a nervous aggression I hadn't heard before. It's me, I called out, walking steadily toward the light. When I entered the room, the scene was almost theatrical. Robert sat at the head of the table, his face cast in severe shadows by the lantern. Mia was slumped in her chair, still wearing her coat, looking jet-lagged and miserable. Susan was wringing her hands in the corner. And there was Jerry, sitting next to Dad, a spread of documents in front of him that looked suspiciously like a lien against the house. You, Robert snarled, half rising, you have some nerve showing your face here. Mom asked me to come, I said calmly, placing my satchel on the empty end of the table. And I hear you're planning to sue me. I thought I'd save you the legal fees and bring the evidence myself. We don't need your evidence, Jerry said smoothly, leaning back. He smiled, showing too many teeth. We know what you did, Amelia. Embezzlement is a serious crime. Taking advantage of the elderly, even worse. Elderly? I raised an eyebrow at my 55-year-old father. Dad, is that what you are now? An elderly victim? Shut up. Robert slammed his hand on the table, making the lantern jump. Jerry explained it to me. The money you managed, the accounts you had access to, you were skimming, that's why we're broke. You were taking a cut for yourself and pretending to pay the bills. Mia looked up, her eyes red. Is it true, Amelia? Did you steal my tuition money? I looked at my sister. Mia, use your brain. Where would I steal it from? Dad makes $45,000 a year. Mom makes 12. Your tuition is 30. The mortgage is 24. Do the math. Don't listen to her, Jerry interjected quickly. She's trying to confuse you with numbers. Robert, sign the equity release. We can get the power back on tonight, get Mia back in school, and then my lawyers will go after her for the stolen assets. I unzipped my satchel. The sound was loud in the quiet room. Nobody signs anything, I said. I pulled out a thick binder, the spine labeled The Reality, and dropped it on the table with a heavy thud. What is that? Susan whispered. This, I said, opening it to the first page, is the ledger of the last 5 years. It contains every single paycheck Dad earned, every paycheck Mom earned, and every single bill that was paid. I slid the binder down the table toward Mia. Look at it. Don't touch it, Mia, Robert ordered. But Mia, driven by the desperate hope that her London life could be salvaged, opened the book. Page 1, I narrated, my voice cutting through the gloom. January 2021. Total household income, $3,800. Total household expenses, $5,200. Deficit, $1,400. Lies, Robert shouted. I made overtime that month. The overtime is included, Dad. Look at line 4, I pointed. But look at the bottom. Transfer from Amelia, $1,400. Paid to mortgage servicer. Mia turned the page. February, she read, her voice shaking. Deficit $1,600. Transfer from Amelia, $1,600. She flipped through the pages, faster and faster. It was a sea of red ink, patched over by green transfers labeled EMILIA. Tuition, I said. Go to the tab marked Education. Mia flipped to the back. She stared at the page. Wire transfer, from Amelia Personal Savings, $4,500. Date, September 2nd. She looked up at Robert. Dad, you said you picked up extra shifts to pay for that term. You said you sold your old motorcycle. Robert's face was a mask of sweat and panic. I gave her the money to send. She's twisting it. I gave her cash. Cash? I laughed, a cold, sharp sound. Dad, you haven't held $4,000 in cash in your life. And Jerry? I turned my gaze to the advisor. Jerry knows that. Jerry knows you're broke. He's not here to help you sue me. He's here to get you to sign over the equity in this house, the only thing of value you have left, so he can collect his commission and leave you homeless. Jerry stood up, gathering his papers. I don't have to listen to this. Robert, when you're ready to be serious about fixing this mess, call me, but your daughter is toxic. Sit down, Jerry, I said. I didn't shout, but the authority in my voice made him pause. I ran a background check on you yesterday. Did you know your license to sell insurance was revoked in 2018 for predatory lending? I have the printout right here. I pulled a single sheet of paper from the bag. I'm sure the state attorney general would love to hear about you trying to originate a loan against a property with a pending foreclosure noti. I see. Jerry froze. Foreclosure, Susan shrieked. Robert, what foreclosure? The one that was generated 3 days ago when the mortgage bounced, I said. The bank moves fast, Mom. Jerry didn't say another word. He grabbed his briefcase, shoved past me, and bolted out the door. We heard the BMW roar to life and peel out of the driveway. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Mia was still looking at the binder. It was you, she whispered. My apartment, the spending money, the flights, it was all you. Yes, I said. And you, she looked at Dad, her voice raising in pitch. "You took the credit. Every time I thanked you, you just smiled and said, 'Anything for my girl.' You let me believe you were this big shot, and meanwhile, you were yelling at Amelia for being lazy." Robert sank into his chair. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. The bluster, the rage, the physically imposing aura of the hardworking patriarch, it all evaporated under the harsh light of the data. "I provide," he muttered, his voice cracking. "I am the father, I provide." "You worked hard, Dad," I said, my voice softening just a fraction. "I never said you didn't work hard, but you couldn't do math. And instead of asking for help, instead of admitting that the world had gotten more expensive than your salary could match, you blamed me. You needed a leech to explain why you were drained, so you made me one. But I wasn't the leech, Dad. I was the blood bank." Robert put his head in his hands. "I told you to leave," he whispered into his palms. "I told you to leave if you had any pride." "And I did," I said. "And this is what pride looks like, Dad. It looks like the lights going out." The reconciliation, if you can call it that, didn't happen that night. That night was just about survival. I paid the electric bill from my phone standing in the dining room. It cost me $300 to expedite the reconnection. I paid the mortgage arrears to stop the foreclosure clock. "Thank you," Susan wept, trying to hug me. I stiffened and stepped back. "I'm not moving back in, Mom." She froze, "But we can't." "I know," I said, "which is why things are going to change. Drastically." I spent the next 3 hours turning the dining room table into a war room. I didn't act like a daughter. I acted like a bankruptcy consultant. "Mia," I said, turning to my sister, "London is over." "But I have 1 semester left," she cried, though the fight had gone out of her. "Unless you can find £5,000 in the next week, it's over. You're coming home. You're going to transfer to the state university nearby. It's a good school, and you can commute." She looked at the floor, tears streaming down her face, but she nodded. The binder lay open in front of her. She couldn't argue with the red ink. "Dad," I said. He was still staring at the lantern, which I had finally turned off as the overhead lights flickered back to life. "The truck goes." "I need a truck for work," he grunted, purely out of reflex. "You work in a warehouse, Dad. You don't haul lumber. You commute 6 miles. You're driving a V8 pickup that gets 12 miles to the gallon and costs $600 a month. We're selling it. You're getting a used sedan." He opened his mouth to argue, looked at me and closed it. The fire was gone. "Okay," he said. "Okay." "And Mom," I said, "you need to stop hiding the mail. You and Dad are going to sit down every Sunday night and look at the bank account together. No more secrets. No more Robert will handle it." "What about you?" Robert asked. He finally looked at me. His eyes were rimmed with red, old, and tired. Are you going to keep paying the difference?" This was the moment, the pivot point of my entire future. "No," I said. The word hung there. "I will help you set up a budget that works on your actual income," I said. "I will help you sell the truck. I will help Mia with her transfer applications. But my money is mine. I am saving for my own house. I am building my own life. I will not be your invisible subsidy anymore." "We can't make it without help," Susan whispered. "You can," I said firmly. "But you have to live differently. You have to live within your means. You have to be honest." I walked over to Robert. I didn't hug him. I placed my hand on his shoulder. It felt bony and frail under his flannel shirt. "You wanted me to have pride, Dad," I said softly. "I do. I'm proud of what I built for myself, and I need you to respect that." He reached up and touched my hand. His fingers were rough, callous against my skin. "I'm sorry," he rasped. "Amelia, I didn't know I was a fool." "Yes," I said, "you were." I left them at midnight. The drive back to my apartment was the longest drive of my life, but also the lightest. The silence in my car wasn't empty, it was peaceful. In the months that followed, the fallout was messy, as reality often is. Mia came home. She ride for a week, then she got a job as a barista while she waited for the spring semester at State. She treats me differently now. With a cautious sort of awe, like I'm a dangerous animal she finally learned not to poke. Robert sold the truck. He drives a 10-year-old Honda now. He hates it. He complains about it every time I see him, but the mortgage is paid. The lights are on. I visit them on Sundays. I bring dessert. We eat, we talk about the weather, we watch football. But when the check comes for the pizza, or when a pipe bursts, or when the tax bill arrives, Robert doesn't look at the ceiling anymore. He pulls out his reading glasses. He looks at the numbers, and he handles it. He lost his illusion of being the king, but he gained something better. He actually became a father who tells the truth. As for me, I'm still a senior data consultant. I still stare at spreadsheets all day. But now, when I close my laptop at 6:00 p.m., the silence in my apartment belongs to me. I bought a house last month, a small one with a garden I paid for, a mortgage I qualified for a loan, and a front door that no one can ever tell me to walk out of again. My dad was right about one thing: you shouldn't take without giving. But he forgot the most important part of the equation. You can only give if you have something left for yourself.